So good evening, everyone. I'm very, very blessed to have some amazing women tonight with myself included. So first off, let's say hi to Liz, with whom we're going to have really that amazing conversation, which I really believe is very enlightening for a lot of us. I think that many of us, when it comes to emotional eating, when it comes to eating disorder, and the whole spectrum between those two aspects. Oh, and let me admit Muriel, sorry. And really, I have to say, we are all very, very much either personally touched, and when it's not us personally, we know someone we love, be a friend, a brother, a sister, a partner, but you get me. So thank you, Liz. Thank you so much to be here and to be able to come and bear your witnessing. And when I said witness, those light chats for me is really the whole thing, that we are all supposedly ordinary women, but we are doing the extraordinary every day. And the greater the challenge and the stronger we get. So we really cannot forget that. It's really, really important to know that we can do it. So those chats are two things for me. What I just said, celebrating the fact that with integrity and love, we can do it. And also that some of us are maybe on the low at the moment, and we are also there, present for them to know that, hey, look, this is my shit, or that was my shit, and I went through it, and if I look at the panel with me tonight, I say we are glorious women in our 50s or late 50s for some of us, and plus for some of us. And we are experts of our own lives. And we certainly don't need know thyself, start with yourself, no one else. And I will encourage anyone listening to that talk on the live or on the replay later. Know thyself, start with kindness, tenderness, and compassion. So that's me in a nutshell. So once more, I'm going to welcome Liz, who just got up. It's Monday morning because she's in New Zealand. So fair play, young lady, to be up. And I'm really, really delighted to have you tonight. It's wonderful. And I already had a chat with Liz, obviously, to prep that talk, and a lot of things blew me away about her stuff I didn't know, I have to say, because I kind of knew Liz because we were on a dream pod together. But a lot of what I found out through talking to Liz, obviously, I had no idea. And some stuff really struck me. So I'm really, really happy to have you here tonight. Or
Thank you.
in the morning, depending on. But yeah, so go on. The first question would be, would you like to say a few words to introduce yourself and comment, any comments you may have on the topic that's coming, or how you want to share about it as well?
I'm really happy to be here, and I can't tell you how awesome it is to see your faces. I feel like it's just a conversation, and thank you all so much, because I've learned a little bit about you all genuinely, and I'm inspired for different reasons. So I feel really like it's just a call of the temple of light, well, it is. So that has positioned me in just relaxing and being really comfortable and honored for your time, especially Florence was saying about it being a bank holiday. Apart from the conversation we had, Florence, which thank you, it was a reminder and enlightening for me too. I'm just really showing up. Yeah. So happy to answer questions or whatever comes
Brilliant.
up and go with that. Yeah.
So given what we discuss then, there's a couple of things that really struck me in Lee's story, and which I would love to be able to make a highlight with if she's game for it. So we'll see how it goes. And I would divide it into parts. So first off, I would love the part one to be very much on Lee's story, because a woman only does the extraordinary when she's able to go through some filter and through some, I don't like the word obstacle, I don't like, but it's still that, going through her growth, you know, and so that would be the part two, and then she's able to transmit and share her growth, which is something that Liz is passionate and devoted to do. So that's wonderful. But the part one, let's make it a bit more about you, about that girl you used to be, that the person you used to be, who you, and again, I'm going to use the word I don't like, which is the word transcend. I don't like transcend at all, but let's say transmit then, So when talking to Liz, there was something she said, and it was a number game. She talked about 1010. She started with 60, 62, 62, but we'll finish with that one. We'll start back to 10, 10, 16, 16. And for me, that were like really like, so let me, if I may, phrase what Liz said, and feel free at any time to correct me, Liz, because it's your story, it's not mine, okay? So I can only report what I heard. It doesn't mean it's the true story. So you said, at 10, my dad passed away. And at 10 years old, my mom put me on my first diet.
Mhm.
And that for me was like, and Liz just kept going. She did not stop she just was telling me, sharing her life very generously with me. But that really like hit me deep. And then she's moving on with the years. And she said, and at 16, I was 16 stones, which was also, and I want, in that first part of the conversation, I would really love Liz to tell us, because I think you will hear the link later on in our part two about the transmission and what Liz really sees as healing and enlightening in terms of emotional heating. If you can just share with us, if you're willing to share with us and to whoever listen on the replay about a bit of your life, be wonderful, Liz, so that we can follow you a bit better.
Thank you, Florence. So as I'm hearing, feeling to share what I will, it's going to be through the lens of the darkness, not going into the darkness, but from the lens of how it was in the darkness and the journey there, and also how food became enmeshed with emotional eating and an eating disorder. So ways of coping and ways of being. So that kind of enmeshment. So I'm from, my parents were Hungarian, and they came over during the revolution, and there was a lot of trauma, a lot of trauma. And my mom, we had a lot of violence in our family, a lot of violence, and it was by my mom. So I get the story. She went through so much, and I understand all of that. And all of that is being worked on. She's left the planet, and we get on really well now. And that's a story in itself. So there was a lot of violence, and all kinds of violence, very unpredictable, different implements. Often without you realizing, there'd be a punch or a pull of the hair or a bite. So there was a lot of this not knowing. There was a lot of vigilance around as a younger person. My brother was 2 years younger than me, still is 2 years younger than me. And I had a sister I still have a sister who's 7 years younger. And so a lot of the times I tried to support and protect them. And I was a really good girl, really good girl. So I tried to do everything well. I didn't ask for things. I suppose as a child, you create ways of coping to get through whatever it is you're coping. Nobody has to go through a trauma for us to develop ways of coping, but we all do. And as a child, we're really creative, whatever way that is. So I disassociated a lot. Like I just wasn't and I can name it now. I didn't know that at the time. So I disassociated a lot, but I was a really, really good girl. Food was used a lot in our family. We were pretty poor. And so food was used as love. It was a love language, and it was also used as punishment. So before I was 10, also, I used to have this thing when I was older as an adult that I wanted cake. I always wanted cake. And one in particular was lemon meringue pie. And it's only as an adult later on that I associated lemon meringue pie, which I've never found the same. But it was when we were relaxed and safe and we were having lemon meringue pie together. So I grew up believing that I was a really bad person, because mum used to say, I wouldn't do this if you behaved yourself. So I'm telling you this not to get at mum. That's not the point. I love my mum and she was a soul on her journey and did what she did. But what I believed of myself. So these comments really, I started to believe I was a really dark energy, even as a kid. And at 11 years old, I wanted to take my life because we were getting beaten a lot. And I really thought I was evil in some way. So I'm telling you this for the darkness, for the hope that, oh my God, like who I am now, totally different, but the darkness. And then I felt like that when I was 13. Like if I wasn't scared of God, I'd have done something. I'd have just done something. So I know I'm all over in that sense, but these were like parts of how bad I used to feel about myself and where it came from. Because I feel like as human beings, we're miraculous and children are incredible with what is possible. So when I was 10, food was already used. I was a good, every time mum went out the house, we'd clean the house. I was cooking, I was looking after my brother and sister and 2 cousins. And so I learned loads of skills, loads of skills that have really benefited me now. And also I had to unlearn some of the caring thing. So I'm just sharing this in terms of boundaries, caring, giving, and we've all got our own version. So when we were 5, my brother and I, my sister wasn't born yet, there's 7 years between us. My mum took us from early hours of the morning from my dad's. My dad worked away and we moved into a different place. And then we were in pajamas, we were woken up and just literally bungled in a car. And I have vague memory, I don't have many memories, but I have vague memory. And then we moved in with John, who was my stepdad, and he was violent, really violent. And he was an alcoholic. And our beatings increased and the violence increased. And mom was getting beaten as well. So we were witnessing that. And yeah, you know, for a young, again, disassociation, you just try and protect your mom and my brother and sister. So I can easily, as I'm talking to you, too much of a carer. I became a carer, and as an adult, I sometimes adopted this role, not always in a healthy way. Do you know what I mean? Not always in a healthy
Yeah,
way.
no.
And
Sorry. Yeah, I resonate personally with it because there is that what they call the offspring guilt, which is something I live myself with my mom. My mom lost the disability of her whole body within 18 months. And I was older than you. I was a later teen. And yet you cannot stop yourself from feeling guilty. You are somehow, you really believe that you are causing, so in my case was a disability. And I remember dressing myself, feeling how she herself felt physically and trying to find strategy within my own body to be able to dress my mother later. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to have interrupted. Yeah,
Oh no. I
yeah,
mean, it's like literally what you're talking about is embody. You know, we embody, even if the simple messages about not looking the right way or being the right way. And I always, somehow, I don't know how, but even as a kid, I couldn't see the behavior as not being okay, but I always had this sympathy, this empathy, more sympathy for my mom, because some of the stories we heard about her life were horrific. And she went through a lot, and incredible stories of being in the middle of Hungary and bombing happening, the Russian tanks there, and then walking. Her and my aunt came over because she had a very violent mother as well.
yeah.
And so like them walking from Hungary through Austria, she was about 15. I mean, she's an incredible woman in some ways. So this darkness, this used to feel hopeless sometimes and helpless. And those were the places where I'm realizing as when I got older, that's how I went into service, to try and be helpful and hopeful. Again, it was, yeah. So when I was 10, I used to plan with me and my brother, I used to plan that we're going to save up bus fare money. I planned the route that we would go to Dad's. And then I used to pray a lot. And then finished with God because my dad died when I was 10. And I, what the, well, I wasn't because I was a kid. So we were in this house. Anyway, so my dad died when I was 10. I was devastated, absolutely devastated. I never actually talked about my dad until I was in my 30s. And I had this little photograph of him and I would cry. Apparently, I don't remember much about that time at all. I would cry and cry and cry. And then I lost the photo. And then I had years of feeling, what kind of person was I that lost my dad's photo? And then it wasn't until my 30s, maybe 40s, that mum told me she took it away. And because she said that she wanted to help me. But I thought it reinforced the badness of me. So I have lived my life being scared of hurting people, mostly, not now so much, although that's there occasionally. And so I chose not to have children as well, because I was so scared of hurting another human being. So these things are all kind of how they build up and how we, as a child, shape the world that we're in for survival or whatever it is. But at 10 years old, I was devastated that my dad left, and food was the comfort. Like food was the comfort. And I was putting on, I remember being podgy, but I wasn't that podgy when I look back at photos. And then this food, it was like the only comfort that I had. So the beatings were still happening. John was still getting drunk and beating mom. I was trying to stop my brother being hurt, and my sister was there at the time as well. So she was 3 and I was looking after her a lot. And it was so overwhelming that food was it. And then my mum put me on a diet. And I didn't make this connection until later on. She put me on a diet at 10. And that would have been traumatic in itself because there was no relief. There was no way of coping. It was the very thing that was serving me at that time was then taken away. And I remembered one time a friend came with a big box of cream donuts, and I was begging for these I wanted a cream donut, and there was this laughter. Well, no, you can't have one. There was like, I don't know, maybe 12 or something of them, this big massive box, and everybody was laughing. Like my aunt was there, my cousin's there, mum's, and I remember feeling sick, but I remember the desperateness of wanting this donut. And then so for years, I was like, I want fucking cake and I want to eat it when I want to eat it. I had this thing not knowing about cake and this sweetness. I didn't know that connection at that time of how important food was. So food became enmeshed. So it wasn't just emotional, it was a way of coping. And
What,
so that was the journey from there.
was it also a way of claiming yourself as like as a big of a F word, and I'll have this cake no matter what,
Oh yeah,
because
later on.
there was this, isn't it? That was that anger. There was an anger that, and the cake was the claiming. It was claiming yourself to a certain extent. It was claiming your freedom, isn't it? Claiming a right to be as well. I feel like saying, yeah, yeah. And where did that actually? So from 10, you ended up 16. So that increased, obviously. You took that right. Correct me if I'm wrong, yeah? But you found a way. Maybe I'm resonating with my own story, uh, where you actually came to dare, and yeah, for me claiming is really the word, so that you reach a 16, which is your 18 after 6 years later. And you say at 16 I was 16 stone, which is quite it's quite a number for a young girl of 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you see? We never see the transition happening, so I'm not going to ask you about that, but more about what did it do to you to realize, oh my God, I'm 16 and I'm 16 stone. What could you do? Could you do anything about it actually at that stage? Or were
So at
you?
16, yeah, I got weighed for a job. I got my first job at Boots. I was a data terminal operator. And when I got weighed, I knew I was fat. I knew that, but I was shocked and totally disgusted. And I didn't think I'd get the job because I was too fat. I did get the job. And I'd been bullied at school for years because we were poor, so we had poor clothes, secondhand clothes. I got bullied for being fat. I got bullied because I wore glasses and all the rest of it. So my
Mm,
self-esteem was not great, but I was really proud of myself for having this job. I desperately wanted this job. And a remarkable thing happened. My mom had a visit first time back to Hungary since 1956. So I was 16, I was born in 62, so it would be 1978. So she was going back and she wanted to go for 5 weeks and she wanted me to go. I just got the job and take my brother and sister. And I begged her not to let me, to go without me because I had my job. So mom went. In that 5 weeks, I lost a remarkable amount of weight. Like remarkable. If somebody would tell me in 5 weeks you could lose, I don't know, nearly 3 stone or something, I'd have gone like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But it was a remarkable amount of weight where I'd changed so much on the outside, and I had a haircut as well. And mum went mad at all these things for losing weight. I'm having a haircut because her friend stayed with us. So mum was really angry. Everybody else wasn't. So there was this wrong, right thing. But I didn't know this. I was still 16 stone. This is when I developed the eating disorder. And this is where I had an incredible distorted body image. It was, wow, really, really distorted. And it was only years later when I saw photos, I was like, really? Oh my God. So I became more attractive to the opposite sex, whereas before I didn't. And so I became more noticeable and I hated it. When anybody spoke to me, I can feel this sicky feeling now. I used to feel like they were put on a bet to come and speak to this fat, ugly person. And I wouldn't be kind. I was a space cadet. Just went because I just thought I was massive and I was getting this attention and I could not handle it. And I didn't want to go to work. I didn't want to do things and I would go off in my head and um, I started dieting then. So this weight was easy to lose to start with. I started dieting. It was in the 80s. It was aerobics. I did all the diets going. Oh my God. And all the exercises going. And at the same time, I met this friend, Moya. Now, our family were pretty crazy for whatever reason, but Moya's family was from Ireland. So my heart is like with the Irish and Ireland. And she had an Irish family that just embraced me. It was like the first time I ever saw a normal, whatever normal family is, and you could fall out, but you didn't like hate each other. You weren't going to get smacked, or they didn't swear at each other. You know what I mean? It was like, so I've known Moya, and she had a sister and two other friends. So there was a five of us for years and years and years. And I didn't realize that that was the first time that I was learning about being in relationship with myself and with others. And of course, I was a really good friend to have around because I did everything. I'll get this, I'll get that, I'll clean this, I'll do that. But I loved it. They were great. And they taught me about I was okay. I didn't have to do that. So I never realized just how significant you only really need one person to have an attachment with and to feel loved, although you don't know it's love at the time. So I've always thanked God for Moya and her family because they just adopted me. And, you know, I had a ball, and I went to Ireland with them, and there was these masses of people that just took you in, and nobody had to kind of watch their back or anything. And trusting people. It's like, whoa, this is. And then if you did hear some heated voices, they were like, it was okay the next day. And yeah, so that taught me a lot. So when I was 16, my life changed a lot. And then my mum hit me. So my confidence was building. At work, I was doing not too bad. I wasn't great, but I was not too bad. I was feeling a bit better about myself because I was doing something. I was not bad at my job. So it wasn't the way I looked. It wasn't that. I was doing something, and I could see what I was doing. And then I was going to aerobics, so it was a different community there as well, and doing all this stuff. And then at 17, my mum hit me for the last time. So she slapped me across the face. I nearly fell down the stairs. And then I don't know what possessed me, but I said to her, and please know I love my mum. I don't want to get at my mum. It's just life. She's taught me a lot. But I went to her, not in a nice way. I was in her face, and that's the last fucking time you ever hit me. And it was. But it scared me that I did not know I had this voice, that I could stand up for myself. Like, I'd never done that before in that way. And it was like, of course, I felt terrible and I sobbed after and all the rest of it. But I started feeling safer being me because I knew that she would never hit me again because I wouldn't stand for it. And I started to, step up more for my brother and sister. So that helped a little bit. So that was really at 16. So I was working, doing all these different things out there. I was dancing more as well, often drunk, but dancing more. So I hadn't realized how much my body was moving, and they'd be like, oh, Liz, she's on the dance floor. I could be there a couple of hours just dancing. So I hadn't, and the music, and I was, drunk a lot, but my body was doing something where I didn't care about others. I didn't care how I looked. And so it's now I reflect back the movement, that doing something that I was learning a skill at, that I think was really helpful as well. Being with friends, we went away on holiday, so we did things that were out of the house and out of my head. The whole time I had a significant eating disorder, sometimes binging and vomiting 8 times a day. So it was never without the eating disorder. And I drank a lot. So I needed that for confidence or whatever. So it was pretty significant eating disorder at the same, and totally disordered body image the whole time. But that's what amazes me about human beings. At the same time, if you look at these other ways of feeding and nurturing yourself without you realizing, you are taking care of yourself, where you're becoming safer in your body, and you're not always in this darkness. I never after that once thought that I wanted to leave the planet. Do you know what I mean? So it's on reflection now, I get that it is relationship, it is doing fun, it is creativity, it is music, it's lots of different things. Because I used to, when I got well, I used to think, how did that happen? I don't get it. How did it happen? How can I help somebody else? And that's when I started to get into trying to help others, but I couldn't, because I did so many courses on eating disorder. I went to the States a couple of times, 3 times. I went to, well, when I got here, New Zealand and Aussie, I did loads in England and Scotland. I worked for an eating disorder service for a short time as well, but I couldn't help. I couldn't help because it was here and it wasn't feeling right. And as an occupational therapist, I kept trying to help, trying to do, but I wasn't really there myself either. Yeah.
So
I don't know.
Liz, when we discussed with Liz, she would have established that that eating disorder came up from, from that time of 10-ish and going through it and ended in the late 40s, isn't it? I'm correct isn't it? So it's 30 years. It's 30 years with an eating disorder or emotional eating. I think ultimately you travel from eating disorder to emotional eating to redefine yourself. That's the way I look at one point. And what I love, and that's my part to being introduced here, listening to Liz, and you hear it even tonight, is like how she goes from, yeah, she's in shit mode, let's say it, and yet she's still able to touch a light from time to time. She goes dancing and she's healing, and she feels the beauty and she feels the freedom. And then she with a friend and she feels, or with that Irish family, and again she feels the framework that's going with her to support her to, and ultimately when we talk, and I'm going to read it because I wrote it down, and I said, listening to you, so listening to Liz, I got a sense that the desire to clear the rubbish and the grief was visceral, and that's how I received it when we first talk. And despite the layers and layers, and it takes 30 years. And let me tell you another thing is I went onto her website. Professional qualification and certificate of Liz. I won't say it all to you because the list is huge, huge. And not only is huge, half of what's written, I have no clue what it is, I have to say. So there's a huge amount of investment for herself first, before going and trying to touch anyone else. There is, and I'm in awe like, I mean, when I say about, ordinary women being the extraordinary and being really given the credit to transmit. We only transmit what we know, what we went through. And you are such a credit, Liz, to that. I have to say, I'm really, when you please give us more, because I really love, like I feel like saying we went into the really dark part of Liz, and there is a shift. That was when there's a beautiful shift when you decide to go into back to your studying and the passion you have in your studying and meeting your husband, and it's that's it. At one point, yes, we all have layers and layers, and we drag bags of sand or stones for most of us. But there is a decision at one point where we either choose the light, and which you did, and decide, okay, I am going to be the person I am. And that takes a long time, 30 years in this case, but it is possible. So if you want to run through some of the highlights of what really supported you in traveling the journey you went through ultimately.
So I guess my self-esteem was stronger. I was having more of a good time even in this stuff. And what I know now is when we're stressed and when we're in the darkness, there's a lot of hormones that we're releasing as well. And so I was binging and vomiting. So I was changing the physiology of my body and also my brain. So with electrolytes and just some of the hormones that were stress hormones, what I realized is when I was having fun and we were away on holiday and there was all these yummy hormones, there's like oxytocin being connected with another, hugging, things like that. And then serotonin, which is used as antidepressant, it lifted, I didn't know, but it was lifting my mood, so changing my perception as well. But what I didn't realize at the time, it was also changing my energy. So where there was lots of shame and disgust about who they are, that was still there, but it was also with the other vibration and energy that was lifted at times. So I feel it pulled me out of that. So then when I was about in 1990, I met this guy. I was doing voluntary work in France for physically disabled people, camping in France, on camping in wheelchairs. Like, who thought that was a good idea? But anyway, I was doing that, and I met this guy from Scotland called Hugh, who was a lot older than me. And I basically moved to Scotland, and nobody thought I would do it because I was leaving my friends and family, and I didn't understand. So the significant changes in my life have not been in my head. It's been a gut reaction, and I've listened to it, and I was thinking, I can't do that. I can't go. But anyway, I did. And then that didn't work out, but it got me to meet John. And I met John, who's my husband now, although we split up for 3 years. And I met John, and here was this man that a really kind, loving man, but didn't take any snash. Like, he was really strong in his boundaries, really knows who he is. And if you asked him a question, if you don't want to hear the answer, don't ask him, because you'll get the truth. But it was the first time in my life that I'd ever met somebody that, like, every time if we had an argument or a debate, I was off. I was going before he kicked me out. Do you know what I mean? Because we ended up living together very quickly because of whatever reason. And so it's like, you don't run away every time I have an argument. And I was like, well, then what do you do? I didn't know like what you did. And I kept waiting for the backlash, but there wasn't any. I don't even mean physically. There just wasn't any backlash. There wasn't any moods. There wasn't like anything. And so he taught me, he's been one of the most significant, second most significant person in my life. And when we would go down to the UK, and he would say, Liz, that isn't okay. And I'd be like, oh, we're just disciplined. It's just how it was. And he'd be, it's not okay. And I remember once we went out for a Christmas, and I said to him, our family were crazy, eh? We still are in different ways. Love them. And we went for Christmas, and I said, when we're coming back, I was always wrecked when I went there, always wrecked. And so, because lots of triggering. And I said to him, that was one of the best Christmases we've had at our house. And he went, are you for real? My mom, Christmas dinner on the table, it upended the whole table. Food, Christmas dinner everywhere. And that was one of the best Christmases we'd had. And I think that was one of the first time that I started to realize it actually was one of the best Christmases. What they've been like before. Do you know what I mean? And it just started to make me curious, because he was just saying things, not judging. And I was thinking, so I did a job. I was a financial consultant in Glasgow. Hated it. I was okay with people, but then my boss left, and he said, at least you'd be a really good financial consultant. And I'm like, no, I just like doing the back end. I like speaking to clients and stuff. So basically I did that. Of course, I hated it and got depressed. And then I was giving pensions advice to this occupational therapist in Edinburgh. And it was occupational therapy day. And I was depressed. I've just been crying in the car, thinking like, I hate this job, blah, 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 blah. And I watched this video about occupational therapy, and I thought, oh, and I was like, I could see these different ways you could help people, like really help people. And so bottom line, I ended up studying occupational therapy. And then it was about the October, we started in the September 3-year degree course. And I thought I was stupid. So I did lots of studying beforehand to get up to scratch. It wasn't supposed to be a degree course. I had an argument with them because it's supposed to have been a certificate or something, and they changed it into a degree. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not clever. I'm not going to cope. What am I going to do? But anyway, I was in a mental health class, psychiatric class, and I was 30 at the time. This is what amazes me about people with body dysmorphia and disassociation. And honestly, I was on that looking at the board, and there was all these signs and symptoms of eating disorders and pre-morbid, like what led to them and all the rest of it. And I would say 85, 90% was me. And it's the first time I knew, I'd had it since I was 16, I was 30, that I had an eating disorder. I had no idea. that I had an eating disorder and how significant it was. And also, it's so secretive. My friends didn't know. I saw my friends 2 or 3 times a week, more every week. Nobody knew I had an eating disorder. And then I had this out-of-body experience, and I was with another friend, Liz, who's the other person that helped me in my life. These 3 main big people helped me in my life. And I said to her, Liz, I think I've got an eating disorder. And I literally, I've only ever had one out-of-body experience, and literally left my body. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. I went up, and then I came back down. And then I had a total breakdown. And that's when I went on the journey of counselling. And it was the university counsellor. Okay. And I was in years for counselling for years and years and years. I don't believe that you need to do that now, but it was a lot of talk, but we didn't do, and it was Rogerian, so there wasn't a lot of talking. It did help, but, and that was the journey of starting to recover with emotional eating. And I worked with an eating disorder service. I should never have done that because I was very active and it was triggering me as well. So you don't make good decisions. You don't take care of yourself. And then anyway, I tried quite a few eating disorder counsellors. There weren't many at that time. And they were doing the best they could, but they didn't really understand eating disorder. So it wasn't really helpful, or in some ways it was. But I also met this group of woo-woo people who were spiritual people. And the woo-woo people believed in angels and colours and Reiki and Sikkim and all of these things. So I would go to these different places and drawing and mandalas and like collage, and there was all of this stuff and movement and all of this thing. And I think so you heard the story about the movement being in the middle of the floor and in the corner of the floor. And so I didn't know all of this. And then I started connecting with God more again, and I realized I'm not religious, but spiritual and angels, and I would talk and my higher self. And so I had all of this stuff and a different kind of, I was in nature. I never forget going up to Inverness and like shouting in the wood, because that was the therapy at the time, at the top of my voice. I did voice stuff, sound stuff. There was all of this stuff. And I've gone tinkly, and I had no idea it was what you don't need 25 years for or 30 years for. So I was into doing all of this stuff. Then I was working in mental health as an occupational therapist and getting loads of training about psychotherapy, which I was drawn to. I was drawn to the art therapies, the creative therapies. I did coaching. I was interested in creativity coaching, and that was my bang, man, because it was like whoosh right into shadow work, because you could. So I did loads of shadow work. I was a creativity coach, trained 3 times. Why 3 times? I have no idea. I loved it. The training, I never knew until I was doing my counselling training that the study was my alternative to emotional eating. That's why I think I've got so much I wanted to learn, but it was the study, because I had to show up for the study because the study was going to help somebody. And so I did not know that it was the study, because I was like, how can I be so focused? But I had to, because we had deadlines. I had to learn. I wanted to learn. I had to. So all of this, I've realized now, was a way that got me through. It was the alternative. So all these other things are alternatives to emotional eating. And of course, I started to feel things. And so there was healing. I'd got energy where I was introduced to chakras. And like healing can heal. And like, well, okay, give it a go. And I just knew I felt better. So when I was in Scotland, all this stuff started to happen. And then I just continued, moved away from working eating disorder because it was too much. I didn't feel it was right. And then, yeah, my husband and I, we split up in 1999. Always loved him, but things started to go wrong. And it's like he felt like my brother more than a partner. And I remember the day I was praying to God and, well, blaming God actually, why we were finishing, because how could you love somebody? But I had that feeling again. Excuse me, that big, massive feeling that also told me to do occupational therapy, because I really didn't think I was clever enough. I didn't think I'd cope. But it was that same feeling that took me out of Nottingham, the same, which I think is spiritual. It's soul, I believe now, calling to you. And it took me to Scotland. It took me to do occupational therapy. It took me to finishing with John, although I think it was mutual. And it also brought me to New Zealand. Yeah. And then from
So,
there, go on.
go on. Sorry to
Just,
interrupt. So,
no, no.
are you saying to a certain for what I hear here, because you is on one hand you're completely holistic and you were open to it all because it all brought you a um something new and something that you needed in your life, and then beside that you had the studies that were steady steady, and that gave you a framework that you were able then to integrate. You became whole, I feel like saying, where you could establish, so on a more 3D level, let's call it that way, where you say, well, I'm actually not stupid to start with. So that's, I can actually go through a degree and I can learn and I can study and I can show up for myself. And on the other side, the more emotional and energetic and spiritual level, where you were able to say, okay, I don't need one modality to heal. I need it all. And that's what I hear in your message. You are not one who comes with just, I'm going and I want to, because I want to transition quickly through the rest of our conversation, where really Liz is not about I'm the one with the 7 steps. Actually, she she doesn't believe in the 7 steps, from what I understand. I think Liz is far more someone say, you fucking try it all and see what works for you. That's my understanding of you. And if I transition to that beautiful woman who's overcome so much, and you're 1962 and being 62 and being able to tell us here and I mean, the work that there is, and someone who's able to talk about her life and to own it for what it is without um it still touches you, but you're at peace with it. When someone is able to express the way you are able to express, and the amount of detail you're able to give to us here tonight, it's just you can do it because you're at peace with it. And I can only resonate with that for knowing the feeling. That's why I can recognize it in you. And from there, you decide, well, because you said it from being a very young girl, I want to help others. And you went through 30 years of healing yourself to come now to say, okay, I am ready. I have all the certification. I went through my own shit, like, which is actually when people should, in my opinion, everybody wants to heal everybody else. They haven't healed themselves. Let's be clear about it. Go and fix yourself first, then go and fix someone else. That's my take. In your case, I think you have done it. So today, when you have, first off, I would love you to do a little distinction for a soul, is the eating disorder versus the emotional eating. I would appreciate if you could just frame that for us. And then the second one is, how do you approach, or what is your approach, more to the point, to whoever comes to you? What do you see, and what's your hope for the person, and how you approach them ultimately? Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So disordered eating, it's got a diagnosis in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is American. And basically, it's eating disorder is if you're obsessed with food, but more so your body. There's a disgust with your body. You feel like the only way that you're going to be happy is if you change your body in some way, shape, or form. And so the eating disorder is how it's done on a length of time as well, and frequency. So how often you eat, what you do with it, and how many weeks, and then you get a diagnosis. So there's bulimia, which is eating and then purging, in some way vomiting, and sometimes that can be exercise as well. I mean, the exercise can be for any of them. There's the anorexia, which is restriction, and then you have a restriction, and usually there's a binge at some point. There's binge eating disorder, which is one of the newer ones. And sometimes you look at emotional eating and you look at binge eating disorder, it's a fine line. It's a fine line. And then there's the other one that's called orthorexia, which is like some people do have leaky guts, or some people are gluten-free, but some of them, if you find a history and a story behind them, you can often see that it's not for the food or the body, it's a form of an eating disorder. So an eating disorder is when you're absolutely obsessed with it and it's so intense that you can hardly think about anything else. So being emotional eating is what it said. It's all of us emotionally eat, and that's okay. But we often, I was speaking to somebody the other day and she said, I know why I do emotional eating now. I want to be happy. And it's like, it's usually what it's really about is avoidance. Emotional eating is avoiding. We're avoiding a feeling, we're avoiding the discomfort, we're avoiding the real world that we're in, we're avoiding a communication that maybe we may be struggling with. We might have some emotions that we don't know how to deal with emotions. So emotional eating is seeking this happiness, but it's almost always about avoiding a way of feeling and being. So emotional eating can also be about seeking the good times as a love language. Do you know what I mean? You can emotionally eat because you want to feel better and you want to feel good. But it's like, what is it you're moving away from? And where I'm at now, I mean, there's more than that. I mean, you'll have your own emotional eating experiences and your own beliefs around that. But working with the ladies that I'm working with at the moment, because I get to work with them for so long, it's blown my mind. But look, bottom line, I would say a lot of it's about anxiety. A lot of emotional eating is about anxiety, and it's not just about whether there's trauma or feeling bad about who you are or self-worth. So emotional eating, there's like 3 core beliefs are not feeling worthy, not feeling lovable, and feeling like you can't cope. These are the absolute 3 core. Everything usually comes down to that. So that doesn't impact just on emotional eating. What we don't realize is it's impacting on your day. How do you do relationships? How do you put your boundaries? Are you assertive? Are you putting out that you want somebody to make you feel better? And so you don't know how to negotiate. Nobody's doing that. So then your option might be emotional eating. So there's that part of it as well. And sometimes we do it because it's bored. We're bored and we don't sit with the discomfort of being bored. Sometimes it's habit. So, and the other thing as well, depending on the types of food that we eat, it stimulates the part of our brain that is where the cocaine gets released, it stimulates as well. So it does give us that feel-good factor for a short moment. But the biggest thing that I'm realizing, and I'm going to do a lot in this, and I don't know how, I actually believe that emotional eating, a lot of it, is the language of the inner child.
Ah,
That
I was coming to that. Before, can you hold that thought? Because before I have it, because we discussed that. Before we go into the inner child, you you said to me, oh, in this world, food is the last thing we think of. And I was like, what? And Liz was in a flow, and I wasn't going to interrupt her. But I was when I took the notes again and to create that interview, I was like, what is she talking about? I mean, the whole freaking world is about food, and the superfood and the everybody's on diets and everybody's. So what do you mean by food is the last thing we think of? Because it felt almost paradoxal to me when I thought of it again.
Yeah,
So
and a lot of what emotional eating is about is there's not feeling comfortable in the body that we've got. And whether that's not knowing how to feel, not feeling safe enough, it's all of that kind of aspect. So food is the last part. And that's a struggle for a lot of people.
okay,
It's a
okay,
struggle
get
for a
it.
lot of people. But we look at where we go first is when did we first get enmeshed with food? When did it become emotional? Where did it change from being food for fuel to few for food for comfort. I've
for
got another,
love. Yeah.
yeah, there's another woman I'm working with who's got an Italian family. So food for them is the whole family being
Yeah.
together.
It's like
And
the
when they're not
French.
there, yeah, of course, you know,
we
so she's
we're
like,
eating our lunch and we're planning on what we're going to eat. Like we're like in front of the fact. So, and we're comparing recipes and we're talking about the fucking food we're going to have tonight. And we're having food. Food is such food and wine is really, yeah, I get that. The
but
Italian and the
that
French. Yeah.
it can be a joy and a pleasure. It's when it's the only thing that you use.
Yeah.
It's when it's in place of everything else. If you're not
Yeah.
feeling, if you're not experiencing those, and you're seeking, there's a book called The Happiness Trap. And so it's about like seeking happiness, which is a bit of a red herring, because we seek happiness. It doesn't exist all the time. It's not possible. We're yin and yang. So we seek these experience. I mean, in food, like the French or the Italian, it's a different way of being because it is for the food, but it's not a way of life.
Mhm.
And it's not in place of feeling emotion. It's not in place of being who you are. And the other thing, the most important thing I'm realizing now is about PAC, parent, adult, child. I'd really encourage every one of you, the next time you feel like emotional eating, pause for a moment and speak to that childlike part of you. So we've got our inner mind has a childlike part. And I'm realizing that when it's emotional eating, it can be about whatever's gone on through the day. But it's like, oh, hey, I'm hearing you. What's not okay for you? Emotional eating, we can actually turn around, I believe now, to be a real asset because it can give you an indication something isn't okay. If it's habit, and it's boredom or whatever that is, then okay, engage the parent, the adult. So the adult would go, okay, my inner child is feeling this. The parent can go there. And the adult can say, well, if I eat 10 of those, what's that doing to my body and my physiology? It's not really helping me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so I'm going to be doing a lot more about parent, adult, and child, because I believe if we start talking to the child with the emotional eating, but we don't realize, I think, how much of it is related to anxiety as well as the love language. And we don't realize that often the day I've had so many people say, I hated my work, that colleague this, my husband that they're all things that need attending to before the emotional eating. Emotional eating is telling you that something's not in line, you're not in your spiritual alignment. It's a disharmony. Because when you're in alignment, when you've got that contentment, it's body, mind, and spirit. When you're out of that, it's a disharmony. So it's like, where is that? And not here. It's like, honestly, I'm seeing more and more it's inner child work. It's a lot of, and you don't have to be analyzed. It's kind of helpful to know where it goes back to. But even if you have you have a kindness and a compassion when you speak to yourself when you come to emotional eating, versus you disgusting pig, you shouldn't be doing that. There's a
And
kind of yeah.
yeah, sorry, you said more specifically, you said we got to know the spirituality of our inner child. That was
And then,
you were the
yes, yeah.
spirituality. So is spirituality can be replaced with love here? Is that what you are talking about?
Spirituality, what I mean by that is this guy David Lee from Wu Wei talks about the spirituality of the child. We need to teach the child her spirituality. And what he means by that is when we are born as a child, when we come from the divine, we're pure. There's no way we can be unworthy. There's no way that we can't be lovable because we are divine. We're pure, we're from the essence. So as a child, we need to teach our child that so that she realized when she wasn't treated that for other reason, for whatever reason, that's the adult who are in her life or in their life that are doing whatever it is they do. That's their journey. But our spirituality, the child's spirituality, she needs to know that she's worthy because she's this the divine essence. She's lovable because of the divine essence. And one of the things about not coping well, wow, how many women, look at all of us, have coped with so much. So that's a lie. So when you feel unworthy, unloved, and like you can't cope. He believes that it's a lie because it's not true. It's just not true. And we have to teach our inner child that she's from, there are whatever her spirits are for her, that she is from there and she's not on her own. And then we as adults have her, we're listening to her, because often as a child we weren't listened to or seen. But as we can, so when you get that emotional eating or whatever it is, like, hey sweetie, okay, what's going on? What's going on? I'm going to sit with you. So we've got to learn to be in our body a little bit more. And often our body is the most unsafe place. So we're making our self safer. So we don't need the food. But if we nourish ourselves in all the other ways, then we don't need food as much. And there is like different kinds of words. So I feel like I've spoken a lot. I don't
It's
know if
fine. With great pleasure.
it's
With great pleasure. It was fascinating. Don't
this help.
apologize for it. I let it run. It was a choice of mine. The responsibility is mine, no one else. But it's a super, super hot topic. You brought it up with so much truth, strength, and vulnerability that I would not have liked it to shorten it. So it's completely cool. And I'm just saying that that I see how whoever crosses your path, you're coming from such an encompassing and loving approach to bring the person back to their own truth and to help them. So really, it's all very good, and I'm delighted to have had you tonight. The one thing I'm going to give you, I don't know, we had our also I see a little message. Uh, okay, I'll let you read it. It's from Jude. I just want to, because we had our Temple of Light live. What was it, last night? No, Friday night. And we did one of those, and I was thinking of you because I don't know if you saw the live or not, but Alexandra was saying, this little, this little gizmo, you know it, don't you? And
I've been using
Alexandra,
it. I've been using it. We create
oh,
them
okay,
called.
that's what I meant, because Alexandra was saying one of her clients really went with like using it for emotional eating, and how on one of them she would have count to 10, take
Yeah.
5 breaths, go out, and as Alexandra was speaking of all that, I was actually thinking of you, and I said I'll bring it up just so you know of it and you already use it. So fabulous. So just to bring that inner child, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
grand. Super.
Perfect.
Yeah. So no, that's really good. Uh, delighted to have had that talk with you. Um, anyway, anyone knows how to get close to you. When I'll put the recording, I will have all the details about you into the chat with the recording, and hopefully whoever needs you will find you. Feel like saying, and if anyone has any questions later on, now in the live, you know where Liz is. So yeah, thank you. You were you took my language, Liz. You took my language, shall I say? So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for the alive women, the one that got strong and came, thank you so much for your presence, because it brings something to the chat, isn't it, to have presence. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
That's
and
it.
thank you, everybody. Sorry if I talk too much, but I'm grateful.
Yeah. Mind yourself. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Alice.
Bye.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Good. Bye.